Dan, I'll be monitoring the chat box on Zoom. And if we can continue to the next slide here, there's a couple more slides here, Cedric, if you don't mind moving over there. Township staff, that's me, will be monitoring the climate action email. If you have any questions, I'd like to go in through that, the Zoom chat box, as well as social media. So as we get going, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the agenda here today, which is the next slide, Cedric. Today, a little bit about the background. This is done under the banner of the community plan, ResiLient Loyalist Township Climate Action Plan, which was actually just approved by council earlier in 2000. I'll tell you about that in a second here. The next, actually, I apologize, the utilities manager is sick today, so Jenna Campbell, the engineering manager, will be talking about the water incentive program. Moving on to the bulk of the presentation will be about the big federal program on energy conservation incentives, and that's done by Cedric Pepelea from Red Squirrel Conservation Services. And lastly, just for a quick close out, a little bit of feedback, hopefully, from the crowd here. So as we continue, a bit about the Climate Action Plan. Next slide, Cedric, if you don't mind. Loyalist Township enrolled in the FCM's Partner for Protection for Climate Protection Program in late 2017. This is a plan that is focused on both corporate, which is Loyalist Township as the corporation emissions, as well as the community greenhouse gas emissions and reductions. It was passed unanimously on council on February 8th of 2021, and this is to act as a roadmap for the local action and keep climate action as a priority in decision making. It's meant to also line up and complement other strategic initiatives, including the strategic plan, official plan, currently being developed, the infrastructure master plan, the secondary plan, budget, and the asset management plan. And this is just a plan that kind of uniquely links to all of these. That is a bit of the start here. Again, this session will be recorded. We'll post it online as well, so you can share it if someone you know wasn't able to make it tonight. And I would like to, invite conversation today. I'll ask Jenna, if you don't mind, we'll be able to speak. And Cedric, next slide, on the water conservation program, the water conservation incentive program by Loyalist Township.
Thank you, Dan, and welcome everyone. Happy to have you join us this evening. So as Dan mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the Township's Water Conservation Incentive Program. I'm pinch hitting here, so hopefully you can cut me a little bit of slack. This is related to goal number 26 of the Township's Climate Action Plan. That goal is to reduce per capita water usage. And we're looking to decrease residential water use by 27% to below 200 liters per capita per day by 2030. So greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with water and wastewater are generally related to the energy required to move water within the treatment plants, collection, and distribution systems. Furthermore, a reduction in per capita usage will also delay costly and often heavy construction related to the expansion of treatment plants and pumping infrastructure. The township's per capita water usage is approximately 27% higher than the Ontario average. So reducing residential water usage has the added benefit of reducing your water bills. So 27% for the average user in Loyalist Township represents approximately 4.5 cubic meters, or 45,000 liters is the conversion there for the average household. So to encourage residents to conserve water, the township this year, this is a new program, is offering credits of $50 on your water and wastewater bill if you install a low flow toilet or a high efficiency faucet. So a low flow toilet is defined as using 6 liters per flush or less, and a high efficiency faucet is defined as using 7.5 liters per minute or less. In order to apply for this program, you'll need some information. The first is some detailed information about the installed fixture. So the manufacturer, the model number, and some of those types of information, some of that type of information. an electronic copy of your receipt or invoice, and your water and wastewater account number. And there's a form on the township's website, www.loyalist.ca/water rebate, where you can fill in this information. And the credit will be applied to your next bill as long as the processing time is there. So it will hopefully be on the next bill, if not the one after that. There's a limit for this year of $30,000 in credits. So that's 600 credits in total, which is 13% of the service accounts that within the township. In addition to the credit, switching to low flow toilets or high efficiency faucets can also save you money on an ongoing basis, and also reduces the amount of water that you're using, which has positive impacts on the township's water and wastewater operations. So switching from a 13-liter per flush, so a sort of an average toilet that would have been installed in sort of the 80s or 90s. So switching from a 13-liter per flush toilet to a 6-liter per flush toilet represents approximately $200 in savings per year, and a reduction of 41 cubic meters per year. And similarly, switching from the standard 18-liter per minute faucet to a 7.5-liter per minute faucet represents a savings of 12 cubic meters per year on average for a family of 4, which would save you approximately $60 in charges on your consumption portion of your water and sewage bill. So just a couple of additional rules on this one. So it's 1 rebate per single family unit. And generally the policy requires that you submit the information within 90 days of purchase, but for this first year of the program, it's retroactive to January 1st, 2020. And the fixture must be a replacement fixture. It cannot be a new build or a new fixture in a newly constructed area of a home. So that is the summary for the Water Conservation Incentive Program. I'm not sure whether we want to take questions now or at the end. Dan, what were we thinking?
Yeah, no, we have a quick opportunity for sure for a question right now. And actually, we do have a question. Has the township or the province, as you might know, ever conducted a residential study of water usage?
There is a lot of information that the township collects on water usage, both metered within the home, and then also water pumped from our treatment plants. There is also information available, some of those stats that I mentioned in terms of average usage within the township versus the province. That's from statistics information.
Okay, thank you. That was a question that came in from the live Q&A.
Thank you for the question.
No problem. If there are any other questions, I'm monitoring. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the Zoom chat box and my email there. But if there are no other questions regarding, oh, sorry, there's another one here. Has the township ever considered the use of holding septic tanks to gather water from rooftops for residential use? Do you know if that's a question? I'm not sure if it's related to the incentive program, but it might be a general question about the township.
Yeah, so not necessarily in that regard specifically, but the township does encourage residents to keep an eye out for, there are some schools and other nonprofit groups such as the Lions Club, who in the past have offered rain barrel sales at a low cost. So that's an option that you can use to collect water to reduce your water consumption from the municipal system, and also to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that you're producing from your property.
Okay, yeah, and there was a question of why not consider this, but is it to do with finances or
Um, uh, for that specific question, I'd be happy to look into that a little bit more with respect to what the rules would be around that sort of installation. I'm not 100% familiar with what's permitted and what's not in terms of some of those larger types of systems. So I would have to check in with some of the other divisions in the township. But if I think my contact information might be at the end of this, and the person asking that question could feel free to send an email, and we would certainly get some more information about that for them.
For sure, and there is an email out there, and it's a climate action email that will come to my box as well as Jenna's. So for sure, if there's any more water conservation incentive program questions, if not, just to being mindful of time, I know Cedric's portion of this presentation will be a little bit lengthy compared to this program here. So Cedric, if you don't mind coming online here, I'd like to introduce you quickly. Cedric is the Executive Director of Red Squirrel Conservation Services, a not-for-profit located in Kingston, however, does serve the broader Eastern Ontario region. I'm sure, Cedric, you can get a bit more detail around the services Red Squirrel offers. And Red Squirrel does the audits and is very familiar with a larger federal program called the Canada Greener Home Grant. So Cedric, if you don't mind, please take us through this grant. I'll be monitoring for Q&A, and I look forward to learning about this program.
Absolutely. Just first off, I'd like to say, no, this is a great initiative with regards to water conservation. Also, just to mention that Red Squirrel itself, we have run rain barrel collection programs and offering rain barrels to residents, and that is something that we are looking at continuing in the future as well. So, just like to start off with that. But the bulk of today's presentation will be with regards to the federal Greener Homes program, and specifically how homeowners can access up to $5,000 in grants to improve the energy efficiency of their homes. So just a quick overview, I'll be kind of going over what the program is, what the process for the registration and eligibility process is, what exactly an energy audit is, and what the blower test involves, as well as what deliverables you will get once you've completed your energy audit, specifically a recommendation report in terms of upgrades. And then really, based on that report, we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper and give you an actual example of how much grant money could be received depending on the upgrades that you end up doing. And that jumps to point 6, is really how do you choose out of this long list of potential upgrades? What do you choose? How do you choose what the best upgrade for your home would be? And then once you have chosen and you go through with it, what is the process to get your retrofit completed and get all of your to basically complete the program and to get your grant. As well, at the end, I will be covering a bit of the costs involved, and then I will be ending it with a Q&A. So if you could please hold your questions until the end, or put them in the Q&A box, and then I'll try to address them at the end. So as Dan mentioned, so there's up to 700,000 grants of $5,000 each to upgrade your home, with an additional $600 that covers the majority of the cost of the energy audit itself, or the EnerGuide evaluation. So step 1, to learn if you're eligible or not, this program is only homeowners that are living in their homes as a primary residence. So unfortunately, this program does not cover any rental properties. And the main 2 documentation pieces of documents that you have to provide is the proof of ownership, as well as some type of proof that that it is your primary residence, such as a driver's license, where you'd have that the same address that you're applying for. The second step is booking your pre-retrofit evaluation. So this is basically an evaluation that we as Red Squirrel Conservation Services can offer. And we have registered energy auditors that have been trained and certified by NRCan, which is the federal governing body administering this program. So what is a pre-retrofit evaluation, commonly known as an energy audit? it's basically a in-depth inspection of your home when it relates to its energy consumption. So we definitely look at, all of your insulation levels, right? Your attic, exterior walls, basement crawl spaces, your windows, exterior doors, your heating systems, your cooling systems, your hot water heating systems, as well as what's called a blower door test. And what a blower door test is effectively put a large fan in your front door. And what this does is it creates a negative pressure where we can actually help us identify any leaks and drafts that you have throughout the house. Just addressing some of these leaks and drafts could be relatively inexpensive and actually have a really high impact on your heating bill. We can also put in into our report and look at the potential of adding solar panels to your house to produce electricity. Once we gather all that information, our auditors will run it through a software called HOT 2000. This is a software made by National Resources Canada, and this is very technical, advanced software where we can enter all of these values and measurements that we've taken from your home, and we can actually run analyses and predict if we were to increase, say, the attic insulation, how much energy that would you would save from that. And we will look into those a little bit deeper once we dive into a report. So once all this modeling is completed, you'll get a number of documents, the first of which being the homeowner information sheet. So I've brought here an example of a home, and we have the areas, the energy intensity, which is basically the amount of energy it uses divided by the area of the home. It does use the energy unit of gigajoules to calculate a lot of this. So we have one standard unit of measure, whether it's natural gas, electricity, oil, or propane. And from there, you will get basically how your energy is being used. Obviously, the most common in residential is space heating. As you can see here, it's clearly over 60% of the energy usage of the home is associated with space heating. And then at a second place is the water heating. So producing heat is very energy intensive. So we can really see that breakdown throughout the home. And what kind of ties to that is where the heat is escaping. So hopefully you've heard the term heat loss. So this will really break down where that heat loss is occurring and where our heat is escaping, whether it's through our attics, our walls, our windows, our basements, and air leakage, which I mentioned, which is what we can discover with that blower door test. So you will get this full breakdown of seeing where all of this leakage is happening, all this heat loss. And then basically what we will get is the actual modeled consumption. So just to be clear, this is not taken from your utility bills. This is just based on the measurements that we've taken of your home. And then just to kind of translate that into dollars, I've used what's called a blended rate. And the bit of a complexity when it comes to both natural gas and electricity specifically is that these rates are constantly changing and do change depending on where you live and the time of year and many other factors. So this is very much an average, let's just say a blended average rate that basically sums up all the different charges. And so that way we can get a really very much a rough estimate based on these figures on converting that into dollars. And in this case, this home uses roughly $1,200 a year in natural gas and $1,500 a year in electricity. So once that's the homeowner information sheet, the next document you get is the renovation upgrade report. And in this report, you get what's called the EnerGuide energy rating. This particular house, which was built in 1970 in Kingston, had a rating of 146. And I would say this is actually an ideal scenario because this type of home would have a lot of potential in terms of how to improve. Obviously, we have here on the scale just to show basically a newly constructed home. A new home is around 75, and we can definitely expect that homes that are 50 years old to be significantly less than that. but that means there's potential. So there's hope and a lot of opportunities to improve. So the very kind of the most important part of the recommendation report is, of course, where the auditor, based on their assessment, will provide recommendations on what items can be upgraded. And also will have the indications of how much energy they would save. So in this case, insulating the foundation is the number one, saving 20 gigajoules per year, and so forth with insulating the main walls, upgrading the windows, and performing air sealing. So let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So the recommendation will say to increase the insulation value of 57% of the basement walls from basically R22, increasing it by R22.5. And we want to be able to calculate, how much is this going to save, and how much are we going to get in incentives through this program. So it says this upgrade could reduce the energy consumption by 20 gigajoules per year. We can do a little bit of math, which ends up coming up to $216 per year in natural gas savings. Now, the one thing I will say also is that homeowners that are using oil or propane, these numbers will actually be greater because oil and propane is more expensive than natural gas with regards to heating. And then from there, I've kind of basically broken down a savings per gigajoule, which is then applied for the later examples. Now, how much money will I get from the grant? And unfortunately, it's not the way that the program is set up. It's not just a blank check of $5,000 to do whatever you'd like. The way that the incentives are measured is based on the improvement from having the first audit and then getting your improvements done and then having a follow-up audit afterwards. And in this case, where the audit recommended that 57% of basement walls be increased by R22.5, we can do the math here where in the chart, we can see that by adding insulation greater than R22, if we did 100% of our walls, we would get $1,500 in grants. However, in this case, if we're only doing 57% of our walls, that value is prorated. So basically the 1,500 multiplied by 57% would equal out an $855 grant for adding that wall, that basement wall insulation. Now, there are a couple different ways to do this. This one is just showing how you can insulate it from the interior, depending on your conditions, whether you have any moisture issues. It could also be highly recommended to insulate it from the exterior, which would involve excavating all the earth around your home, insulating it from the outside. But again, we always recommend, leaning on the expertise of a contractor and again, the specifics on your home when it comes to implementing any of these solutions. But just to say that here is a few images of different ways on how it can be insulated from the interior using different products or even a combination of products. So what's the next step? So we've completed our pre-retrofit evaluation. That is the first initial audit. We've received our recommendation report, which we've gone over. And we now need to choose what retrofits we want to implement. From there, we call our contractors, we get our quotes, we compare our quotes and select our preferred contractor. Again, very important to stress this, that it is important to have multiple opinions, get multiple quotes, and don't just kind of go to one single contractor. So once you've obviously selected them, you get the work done. And then once all of the work is complete, we need to do a second, what's called a post-retrofit evaluation. And this is the important piece because we need to be able to document, measure, and report on the improvements that were had from the pre-retrofit evaluation. And again, based on that, in the post-audit, we will measure and capture the documentation related to the completed retrofits, as I mentioned. And that's when we submit all of these documents to the Federal Greener Homes portal. And of course, last of all, you receive your reimbursement. And again, just to be clear, this entire program is on a reimbursement model. So all costs, including the cost of the audit and including the costs for your contractors and your upgrades and materials need to be paid up front, and then the program will reimburse you at the end of the program. So what other retrofits can I get grants for? The list is quite long, but basically boils down to these categories, and within that there are subcategories as well. So what other retrofits can I get a grant for? So of course there's the insulation, right? So all the different types of insulation, air sealing, as I mentioned, windows and doors, thermostats, even though it's only a $50 incentive to get a smart thermostat, space heating and water heating, renewable energy, so that's the solar panels we mentioned. They also cover resiliency measures, so that is mainly focused on preventing water leakage, so waterproofing foundations, roof membranes, things like that, to prevent water damage. So I'm going to go through these rather quickly, but just to show how some of these other grants are calculated. So when it comes to air sealing, it's all about a target that is set when we do our initial measurement of the house. And the grant is based on whether you meet your target or exceed that target. So by meeting your target in the RUR, which is the renovation upgrade report, so that's for meeting the target, you get 550. For reaching 10% higher than your target, you get 810. And for reaching 20% better than your target, you would receive $1,000. So let's just look kind of what that would look like in the case of this home. And just also the image on the right is a blower door in action. So in this case, the air exchanges per hour, so the amount of air that would circulate throughout the house within an hour, would be 5.2 air exchanges per hour, which was currently measured. So if you reach 10% better than your target report and bring that number down to 4.7 air changes per hour, you would receive a grant of $810 to do that. And again, how to achieve this can be a variety of things, spray foam around, dryer vents, basically any openings you have to the exterior, putting caulking around windows, or even when you replace your windows and you get better seals around those windows. There's very numerous little things that can be done to achieve this. Windows and doors. There's basically two tiers when it comes to windows and doors, and I will say, just from customers that I've spoken to, this is definitely a very popular retrofit that a lot of people end up going for. Obviously, it's not, it's very good getting new windows, increasing the value of the home. But when it comes to the grant, it's really based on the energy rating of that window. And the most common tier at $125 per window is basically an Energy Star certified model with an energy rating of greater than 34. One thing that I encourage all clients, specifically when looking for windows, make sure that you ask your contractor who you're working with or your supplier to make sure that the lists, that the windows that they are quoting you are on the eligible list, which can be found through the website. And I will provide links to this website as well at the end of this presentation. The next tier at $250 per window, those are what they call the Energy Star most efficient model. So they have an energy rating greater than 40 and would typically fall into your, triple pane kind of high-end windows. So at that point, it's really, looking at the dollars and the economics and seeing, which one works best. Similarly for doors, there's only one category, which would be $125 per door. The one thing I want to also mention when it comes to windows is, if you look in the top of this column over the dollar amounts, it says amount per rough opening. It doesn't actually say amount per window. And what this really means is the actual hole in the wall, not the number of windows that makes it up. So in this picture, I just showed you that this large bay window here, which if you look at it is comprised of 5 individual windows, unfortunately only counts as one rough opening. So therefore it's only eligible for the grant of either $125 or $250, depending again on the energy efficiency of the window. Contrary, even a small bathroom window also counts as one rough opening, and you're also entitled to the same $125 or $250 for that rough opening. So again, in the going back to the report for the home that we're using as an example, the auditor in her recommendation report recommended that 10 windows be replaced with Energy Star certified models. So in this case, it's pretty straightforward, where we take our 10 windows, multiply it by $125, basically totaling $1,250 in grants for the window portion. And just to say, the way this grant works is, again, up to $5,000, and you want to basically add as many of these little pieces as you can to try to get up to $5,000. So upgrading the heating system, this is obviously a big ticket item in terms of, it's a major component of your home. And as we saw earlier in the presentation, space heating is 60% of our energy usage. So in this case, upgrading the heating system, they've provided two different recommendations. So one being installing a new Energy Star certified forced air condensing gas-fired furnace. This would also apply to propane or oil heated systems. You could install new ones there, but unfortunately, under the federal Greener Homes program, they do not cover any fossil fuel burning appliances. And therefore, the only thing that they do cover are the Energy Star certified air source heat pumps. So there is other programs for natural gas customers through the Enbridge program, which I will touch on briefly at the end of the presentation. But I get the question all the time, what is a heat pump? So I'll quickly spend a few minutes just describing the operation of a heat pump. So basically what a heat pump is, it's essentially an air conditioner that can work in reverse. So this unit that you typically have a unit outside, and then that could either tie into your existing furnace, whether it's oil, propane, or natural gas, or it can be standalone through like a ductless system, which often are referred to as mini splits. And basically the way they work is they use electricity to basically create heating or cooling. So they work very similar to an air conditioner, again, with the added component of being able to work in reverse. So this is what's heavily being incentivized under the Greener Homes program, and is a great alternative, specifically when it comes to converting or getting away from oil, propane, and natural gas for heating. So the way the grants work is there are basically 3 tiers when it comes to heat pumps. So this lowest tier at $2,500 is typically for very small systems with 2 indoor ductless heads. So this is typically for a smaller home. And again, similar to the windows, the quoted equipment must be on the eligible list. The next tier up, which is probably the most common, is our typical air source heat pump, which again can be a central ducted system or have 3 interior mini split heads, which again are basically cassettes that mount on the wall that do not tie into ductwork. So if you have a home, say, that's heated with baseboards and you don't have any ductwork, it can obviously be very expensive to install ductwork. So then sometimes what they call the 3-door heads or ductless units are probably the best answer for that. Now, again, we definitely recommend going through an HVAC contractor to really look at what the best solution is for you. And the reality is that there's a lot of complexity when it comes to heat pumps and heating systems in general. So again, going back to that point of getting multiple opinions and multiple quotes is always a strong benefit. But this $4,000 grant is for basically the generic heat pumps that again are sized for your entire home. The next tier up is a full $5,000 incentive, and these are for what are called cold climate heat pumps. So these are heat pumps that have been developed specifically for our colder climates and can actually still provide heating at minus 30 degrees Celsius. Whereas the previous models, the more traditional heat pumps, when it gets to about minus 10 or minus 15 degrees Celsius outside, they sometimes struggle to provide heat. And at that point, you would need a secondary heating source, which is either baseboards, a furnace, a boiler, something like that, or even an electric furnace in some cases. Whereas the cold climate heat pump does still require a backup system just in case, because we do sometimes get temperatures that are beyond -30, and you obviously want to make sure that you have a system that can cover the load, your heat load throughout the winter. So when we're looking at our grant in this case, the recommendation was to install an air source heat pump, and this was the more typical heat pump, which would qualify for $4,000 of incentives. And again, space heating accounts for 60% of the estimated annual energy use of the home. And again, we have the cost savings there as well. Installing solar panels. So basically the way the incentive works is you get $1,000 per kilowatt installed. Now, what is a kilowatt in terms of capacity, and what does that mean? How big is the system that I need to get for my home? That is basically what we need to figure out. And part of that process, specifically when it comes to adding solar panels, is what's called a solar ready assessment. So as part of this assessment, which is done by a solar installer in the area, and not by us, so we would recommend that you go through a solar contractor to provide a document which basically lists the roof angles of your home and the basically total amount of total PV capacity, as it's labeled here, in this case being 11.5 kilowatts, is what could fit on the roof of this home. And again, it shows us all the directions and whether the roof is sufficient, has sufficient structural support to support the system, as well as the LDC capacity. And LDC stands for local distribution company. So that would be, Hydro One. So whether Hydro One would allow you to connect your solar panels to the grid or not. And in this case, for this client, the local distribution company, Hydro One in this case, has approved them to put solar on their roof. And so going back to our recommendation report, where they recommended a system, 11.5 kilowatt system be installed at $1,000 per kilowatt. This would actually turn out being $11,500, but unfortunately, the incentive is capped, or the grant itself is capped at $5,000. So just installing this solar system at that capacity would maximize the grant available. And again, calculated the energy savings from that system. So some other potential upgrades is attic insulation is a very common one. We in the industry call it the low-hanging fruit because it's typically relatively low cost, specifically if you compare it to, adding basement insulation where you need to excavate the exterior, or, changing your heating system, or, adding solar panels. Generally, adding some insulation in your attic is generally one of the lower cost items. And has a pretty decent incentive. And just to say, the way these incentives work, it's all based on your starting point, and then once you improve it, what your ending point is and how much you've improved it by. So just in this one example is if your current insulation level in your attic is R12 or less, and you bring that up to R50, you would receive a grant of $1,800 for that. Obviously, if you already have a decent amount of insulation in your attic, say between R12 and R25, and brought that up to R50, then that incentive would drop to $600. And again, ways to add that insulation. There are different products and different contractors. And again, encouraging you to reach out to different contractors and get different opinions and do a bit of research. And obviously our auditors are there to answer your questions, and they could definitely provide some advice and on what type of insulation is best for your particular application. The other component, as we saw from the homeowner information report, was that hot water was the #2 most energy consuming item in your home. And a lot of people don't know about this product, but you can actually get heat pumps that are built into a hot water heater. And you can actually put in an image here on the left. So you basically get, it just looks like a regular hot water tank. You connect your water pipes to it, as well as electricity, and it basically uses the electricity to heat up your water, for showers and washing your hands. This is actually about 3 times as efficient as a typical electric hot water heater, because it does, again, use that heat pump technology. But if you do purchase one of these systems, you are eligible for a $1,000 grant. So again, just to summarize, I just kind of went through a few of the examples, but then again, this is what you would get in your recommendation report, and really showing in gray the current consumption for these various areas, and then after you do the upgrades, what the reductions will be. And obviously we can clearly see the massive reduction when it comes to the basement foundation, as in this particular case, they are losing quite a bit of heat through the basement foundation, but there are also, significant savings to be had around the main walls, as well as the windows. Very similar here, this is the actual consumption in gigajoules within the categories. So space heating, space cooling, water heating, obviously with a big focus being on space heating. And this is implementing all of the upgrades that were listed. Now, you necessarily don't have to implement all the upgrades. Again, these are just recommendations, and it's up to you to, choose, and we'd be happy to help and then provide explanations for all of these items. And then it's up to you to decide which ones you'd like to move forward with in terms of implementing. Just before I wrap up, so this entire presentation up until now has been with regards to the Greener Homes program. However, for Enbridge customers, so those who do have natural gas, there is an additional program that is provided by Enbridge. And the main difference in this program is they do provide incentives to install new natural gas equipment, such as a water heater, natural gas water heater, which also includes instantaneous hot water heaters using natural gas, as well as natural gas furnaces and natural gas boilers. They do cover some of the other things that are the same as in Greener Homes, such as windows, insulation, and air sealing. But I will say generally the Enbridge program is significantly less generous when it comes to these things. Just one example of that is the windows, where you can clearly see here that it says that you'd only get $40 back for each window, whereas through the federal program, you can get up to $125 to $250 per window. So last thing is just going over our prices. So again, there are 2 audits that are required for this program. One is the pre-retrofit evaluation at $450 plus HST. Again, that is done before any work is started. And then after your work is completed, we come back and do the post-retrofit evaluation at $200 plus HST. So that comes out to a total price of $650 plus HST. And again, you will receive a $600 reimbursement for that. So all you end up paying out of pocket is $650 plus the HST. Depending on where you live, there may be some travel fees associated to it, but generally, Amherst View and Odessa, there is no charge. But if you are a bit outside of that, there is a travel fee that may apply. All right, any questions? I think I did that within time.
Thank you, Cedric. I did see a question come in, actually, if you don't mind. I do appreciate. Do you know if people can stack the Canada Greener Homes program and the Enbridge program? If you could speak to that, and I'm going to keep on monitoring everything else. And thanks again. That was a very good presentation. But yeah, please, do you have any idea on that?
Absolutely, that is a great question, and the answer is yes. However, you have to be cautious because you can't basically double dip for the same item. So the only time people or customers are applying to both programs is, say, if they're replacing a furnace and maybe a hot water heater with natural gas furnace and a natural gas hot water heater. And then they're doing other items such as their windows or insulation levels under the Greener Homes program. The other thing with the Enbridge program is there is a minimum amount of upgrade measures that you have to complete to qualify for the program, which is a minimum of 2, not including a furnace. If you are doing a furnace or replacing and getting a new furnace, you would have to do 3 upgrades, including that furnace, to qualify for the Enbridge program. So basically the main rule is there, so you can't apply for a rebate on the windows and apply for the same rebate for the same windows through Greener Homes. But we can with one audit, so you pay the audit once, we can enroll you into both programs, but again, just expect to be doing a lot of upgrades at that point. But at that point, you could potentially reach a grant of $10,000 in total, $5,000 from Greener Homes, $5,000 from Enbridge. A good example for that, especially if you're hitting the cap, is say you're installing solar panels on your home, which is only covered under the Greener Homes program, which again would maximize your incentive at $5,000. Then you could do all your other upgrades under the Enbridge program, and again, potentially get up to $10,000 in grants.
Thank you so much. I'm going to see, just kind of keep an eye out. If there are any more questions right now, it is open for me to ask Cedric, or type it in the chat there. Hey, there's Jenna.
Hi, maybe just while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions, I just want to note how this program, it links to the township's climate action plan. So this links to goal number 19 in the climate action plan, which is to reduce residential energy usage by retrofitting existing homes. So the target aims to reduce residential emissions by 10% below 2016 levels by 2030. And the climate action plan speaks to there are almost 3,000 residences within the township where residents are experiencing very high or extreme energy cost burden. So this is really important piece of the pie for getting to our greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets, and also helping people to save money over the life cycle of their assets within their home.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I do have another slide here just with some links. So this has our website for Red Squirrel Conservation Services with, of course, more details on the audits, as well as the registration page, as well as the eligible retrofits page for the Greener Homes program, as well the link at the bottom has the link with details with regards to the Enbridge gas program.
Thank you so much, Cedric. I haven't seen any other questions come in, but this will be a great evergreen resource being recorded. It is, as we mentioned earlier, that we will host on our website, on YouTube, as well as promote further for those that couldn't make it tonight. And Cedric, I'd like to extend, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to both present tonight and allow us to have this resource going forward. If we continue on to the next slide, I would just like to kind of show another opportunity for those watching. Right now, the township's actually in development of an infrastructure master plan, and we've done public outreach through the last while. In the next, there will be a survey regarding inter-community trails and urban sidewalks, and looking for real life feedback from residents. So anyone watching this, maybe not in a year from now if it's still on YouTube, but definitely in October of 2021, there will be that survey out. And I think any support promoting and getting it around would be fantastic. I think I see a question coming in here. Perfect. Actually, this is a question, Cedric, I just saw a note saying that from Mr. Hilson saying our home meets or exceeds all the program's upgrades. So if you want to use my costs, we'd be pleased to cooperate. So we can reach out and I can send that Mr. Hilson, if you don't mind, for furthering that. That's a great opportunity.
Thank you.
And lastly, and thanks everyone again, staying under time, which is good, I think, now in the world of Zoom. Then the last slide here is just a thank you slide, Cedric, just that last slide, if you don't mind there. Thank you for making the time taking the time out of your day. Thank you for being engaged in programs like this in our community. And for any a little bit further things, if interested, the ResiLient Loyalist Township Climate Action Plan is available online. Sign up for the newsletter as we do periodic updates of both the corporate updates as well as different neat initiatives in the community happening by community partners and residents. And if you have any ideas, please reach out if you have any ideas for collaboration around this. Thanks again for taking time tonight. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And have a fantastic night. Thank you.